Sénégal. Jana tukara basona manga jangale gita do bouger do faywa. Nge elef to tology examelinga sarla am the fita mugena. Assuré colo.
Imperative. It's imperative that you be on time. It's imperative that you get the work done. Imperative. What does that mean, imperative? Imperative, it's almost like an order. Imperative, it's almost like saying must. You must be on time. You must finish your work. So imperative is something that is an obligation that you have got to do. You have got to go. Something that you absolutely have to do no matter what. It's imperative. That is what an imperative is. Something that you must do. An obligation you cannot miss. You just cannot do. You cannot go without. It's an imperative. And so what are imperative verbs? Imperative verbs are verbs that are being used in a sentence or in an imperative sentence, period. Imperative verbs are verbs that are being used to create an imperative sentence. For example, it's imperative that you be at work on time. That is an imperative sentence. You must be at work on time. You cannot be late. You cannot come to work late. It's an imperative sentence. So an imperative sentence, it has a tone of bossiness. It has, when you read an imperative sentence or you listen to it, it's somewhat bossy. Like you find it that you're giving a bossy statement. Like the person reading or the person saying it, it's kind of like he's bossing the other person around. And so it's like an order. It's like a command, an imperative sentence. And with the imperative sentence, there is no discussion about it. There is no opposition about it. There is no change to it. It's either that or not. It's either you're in or out. We don't give room for discussions. You don't give room for change. It doesn't give room for explanation. It just tells you what you ought to do or what you ought not to do in a kind of tony way, but oftentimes much more polite. Because yes, you could be bossy, but in a much more polite way. That is an imperative sentence. So I said imperative verbs are verbs used to create imperative sentences. These sentences, imperatives are often an order or command. It's an obligation. It's an obligation. The tone is polite. The tone is polite, but sounds bossy. It sounds bossy. For example, water. Water is imperative for survival. Water is imperative for survival. It's imperative for your success. Studying is imperative for your success. What about another example? It's imperative. It's imperative you see me latest today. It's imperative you see me latest today. So what about some other examples? It's imperative that you come on time. It's imperative you come on time. Fruits and vegetables are imperative for good living. It's imperative, it's important, it's an obligation, it's a must. It's a do without. It's a in and not out. It has no room for arguments, it has no room for discussion, it has no room for amendments. It's a no-go zone for contradictions. That is an imperative. You have put importance to it. It's either you meet me latest today or you're fired. It's either you're on time or you quit the job. It's either you study or you fail. You know what I mean? It's imperative. Christ is imperative for to make heaven. You know what I mean? Religion is imperative for spirituality. Things that are important, things that you cannot take out, you cannot cancel. Imperative. Imperative. That's the definition of imperative. It has no room for discussion. So when you read certain passages, you should be able to detect certain imperative sentences that are there. You cannot be late. That's an imperative. You cannot be late. It means it's imperative that you be on time. So get to know that what imperative verbs are. I've told us imperative verbs are being used to create imperative sentences, and these are imperative sentences. I've told us where you should find them. The tone when reading, the tone is often bossy. The tone is often like a command or an order, which is undisputable. So this is an imperative. Go use it. Try to make sentences with your tone. Try to use it. Try to identify some imperatives in your words, okay? Thank you.
Assuré que